and welcome, welcome, welcome. It's time for the thing that we've been waiting for I don't know how many years, since the year 1405. If you've been waiting that long.
Over 600 years.
That's right. Over 600 years, we've been waiting for this day. Finally, we've arrived. I want to welcome all of you to our very special day of learning around Jewish astrology, and especially around the awesome and important conjunction that's happening today. Actually, it's happening in Pacific time at 10:20 a.m. of planets Jupiter and Saturn. This is a periodic conjunction that runs in different cycles that is important to historical astrology, and it is happening in the sign of Aquarius for the first time since the year 1405. Why is that important? It's extremely important, and you're going to find out all about that today, along with a lot of other really important things. I just want everybody to be very comfortable. It's going to be a long day. I just also want you to know that we're recording this whole thing. So if you have to come and go, if you missed part, you want to rewatch it, everyone who's registered will be receiving the links to the recordings once they're uploaded. And you can watch it over and over to your heart's content. So don't worry so much about missing stuff. Make sure that you're hydrated and have something to drink nearby. I just want to set the table to tell you what's happening today. First, this introduction. Next, we're going to have invocation and blessing from Rabbi Tamima Audrey Itzkovitz. And then we're going to jump right into our panel on the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the foundational text of Jewish mysticism and the starting point for Jewish understanding of astrology. You can't really talk about Jewish astrology at all without talking about the Sefer Yetzirah. And then we're going to have live from Jerusalem, a unique performer, a wonderful musician. I don't even think musician is the right word for her. She embodies sound in a completely unique way. Victoria Hanna, and she's going to do her Sefer Yetzirah for us and lead us in some exercises as well around the words of the Sefer Yetzirah and the letters, and it's going to be amazing. And right around noon, if things go as they should, we are going to have Me'era Epstein. She's going to teach us all about Ibn Ezra, our great Torah commentator and sage, Abraham ibn Ezra, our great medieval sage. He is the one who built on the works of Bar Hiyya to develop Jewish astrological thought around astral magical understandings of Torah, and really developed the significance of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in terms of historical astrology. And about 2 o'clock Pacific time, I will be on a panel with Rabbi Jonathan Seidel and Joseph Needleman Ruiz, and we're going to talk about the role of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in messianic thought and the impending age of Aquarius. What's so great about it? What could possibly go wrong? And what the Jewish astrological archetypes and symbolism might teach us about the role that the Jewish people might be playing during this long anticipated Aquarian age. Just in terms of how we're going to behave today, I would like to ask everyone to keep their microphones off until we're doing questions and answers, and then you can raise your hand and be called upon. We will just mute you if you're talking out of turn. My theory about this conference is that because it costs money to attend, that nobody random is just going to show up and be disruptive and be a jerk. But if anybody does, they will just be ejected, and that's like no second chances with that. So don't worry about that. If disruptors appear and want to pay to disrupt, we will get rid of them. Let's use the chat for questions for the presenters, but don't expect them to be able to see the questions and respond in real time, because The presenters may be speaking, they may be using a PowerPoint. So lots of times I see people writing things in the chat and they expect the person who's speaking to be able to see it, and that just isn't how it works. So just put your questions in the chat, and then when it's time for the Q&A, we'll read them. And try to keep distracting side conversations to a minimum, or preferably not at all. This is another thing that sometimes happens in chat. Somebody will say, oh, I see a bird outside my window, and then there'll be 15 minutes of chats about different kinds of birds. Let's not do that here, okay? Let's have respect for the people who are showing up to share their time and their expertise by concentrating on the subject. And I just want to mention really quickly the mission of the Institute for Jewish Esoterica. So you have to understand where you are right now. You're in the convergence of the Aquarian Minyan and the Institute for Jewish Esoterica. What is the Institute for Jewish Esoterica? It's a completely fictional idea that only exists in my mind, but it's an idea that I had after I graduated from grad school with a master's degree in Jewish studies and spent several years in academia. And prior to that had come from a more lay person's and mystical background, living in Israel for many years, studying Kabbalah, living in Sfat. So I realized that there's just a great gap between the world of academia and the world of lay mystical people and scholarship. And there needs to be a safe place where academics and mystics can interact with each other without the fears of their respective institutional biases preventing that, because that's what happens if mystical minded people show up at academic environments. They are usually laughed at or scoffed at, and then when academics show up in mystical spaces, they are looked down upon. So that's not going to happen here. The whole point of this is a place where we can all be together no matter what our backgrounds are, listen to each other with open minds and respect. And no matter if somebody has a PhD or if they're just a really well-read lay person who really is into this subject, we're going to make safe space for that, okay? And without any further ado, I would like to just mention that the actual solstice has already happened. It happened at 12:02 a.m. Pacific time, which was 5:02 a.m. Eastern and 12:02 in Israel. The conjunction, though, happens at 10:20 a.m. Pacific time, 1:20 Eastern and 8:20 Israel time. So we're just about there. And we're going to start off with Rabbi Tamima Audrey Itzkovitz, who's going to give an invocation and a blessing for our work today. Tamima, where are you? There you are.
Here I am, Hineni. Good, beautiful day. It's really exciting to be here for this confluence of energies coming together in a unique way. So what I thought we would do is draw from the ancient wells of Jewish practice and chant the Ana B'Choach together. And if you don't know that piyut, you will know it soon. But I want to give it a little bit of context first so we can share how it connects to what's going on now with the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, as well as the secret of 7. So here are just a couple of images to give us a sense. Let's see. Oh. There it is. So this is an invocation of blessing the 7 sacred cycles. As we know, and we affirm every Shabbos, Jewish people, Jewish practice, we're a people that sanctify the number 7. As a matter of fact, we say this in the Shabbos liturgy. And so it's a really important number in the Jewish psyche, and I dare say the world psyche. And I mention this because in Sefer Yetzirah it references 7 kochvei lechet, which are the moving celestial bodies that are ongoing. And these are the planets that we can see with the visible eye. And Sefer Yetzirah talks about it in this way. Sefer Yetzirah calls out 7 double letters: Bet, Vet, Gimel, Gimel, Daled, Jaled, Kaf, Chaf, Pe, Fe, Resh, Resh, Taf, Saf. And how we pronounce it is different. Chakakan, Chatzon, Sarfan, V'tzar Bahem, Kochavim Ba'olam, V'yamim B'nefesh, V'yamin B'shana, V'shi'arim B'nefesh, Umihen Chakak Shiva Rakiim, V'shiva Adamot, V'shiva Shabbatot, L'fichach Chaviv Shivi Tachat Kol HaShamayim. So 7 double letters. The Beged Kefret, they're double letters. That means they have 2 ways of being pronounced and 2 ways of energies associated with them. They were engraved, carved, permuted, weighed, and transformed. And through them are formed Kochavim, stars, the celestials in space, days in time, 7 stars, 7 days of the week, 7 double letters, and gates in soul, which are known to be the openings in the head. 7 firmaments, 7 earths, 7 Shabbatot, 7 Shabbases. And therefore, 7 is beloved underneath all the heavens. So there's this real affinity, love for the uniqueness of the number 7. And Nechana B'choach, which is the piyut that we're going to chant, it's a spiritual poem attributed to Nechunya ben Hakana. And in the Ashkenazi service, it's said before Lecha Dodi on Shabbos. And in other services in Sfard, for example, it's said every day. It's composed of 42 words, 7 lines, 1 line for each energetic, 1 line for each of the secret of 7s. So that was really interesting. I started doing this practice because one of my teachers said, Tamima, I want you to walk 7 circles as part of your davening practice. She was a Sufi. I think she had studied with Sufi Sam, who had a practice of doing planetary walks. And so I started doing this. And soon I started doing the Ana B'choach and realized that they fit together really well. Then some years later, when I was perusing through a Kabbalah Siddur, I saw the note next to the Ana B'choach. It's good to walk circles when you do the Ana B'choach. So it was a natural kind of organic process that led me to this. And I know it's really dear. So I want to invite you to chant with me. And what I'm going to do is actually, I want to see your beautiful faces. So I'm going to make the pictures the bigger so I can see you. And I want to invite you to chant the Ana B'choach with me. And as we chant it, move, make like a planet orbiting. So it's easier, this way we can do this seated and stay at our desks. Okay, ready? And I invite you to chant with me, even if you're muted, so that we make a happy sound, a potent sound to attract the source. 7 lines. The other thing I'll mention about that is that the name of 42 is encoded in this piyut. And this 42 has a gematria of Membet, which is Ma'aseh Breshit, acts of creation. And so when we invoke this name, this holy, holy name of God, we are invoking the first light of Eden, the energy, the pure light into our life, into our conference. And that's our intention. So it goes, I do this melody. I like this melody that I learned from Reb Zalman by the Holy Regina. And it goes like this. Lai, 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 ya, lai, ya, lai, 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 ya, lai, 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 ay, ya, 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 Ana B'choach Gedula Jemincha Tatir Trura. Ay, 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 Kabel Rinat Amcha Sagvenu Taharenu Nora. Ay, 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 Nahagibor Dorshe Yehudecha Kevavat Shamrim. Ay, 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 Barchem Taharem Rachameh Sikatecha Tamid Gamlim. Ay, 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 ay. Hasin Kadosh Berov Tivcha Nahel Adatecha. Ay, 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 ay. Yachike leamcha pene zochre kedushatecha. Ay, 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 ay. Shavatenu kabelu shma takatenu Yodeya Talimat. Ay, 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 ay. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ay, 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 ay. Lay, 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 ay, ay, lay, 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 ay, ay, lay, lay, lay. Yeah, lay, 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 lay. Through time and space, your glory shines, majestic one. Ay, 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 ay.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamima. Now that
You're
you've gotten us all into the Sefer Yetzirah zone. Baruch Hashem. So welcome all the people who are still coming into the rooms. I am going to be making our panelists spotlighted here, so just hold on. Spotlight. And this is, hi, Jill.
Hi.
Here's Marla. Okay. Here we go. There you go. You're all on Spotlight now. Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. I would like to introduce our panelists for the Sefer Yetzirah portion of our day. And it is very exciting to me to have all of these people here. Let me get my little introduction thing up here. Okay, so Rabbi Jill Hammer, PhD, is with us in the house. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. She is an author, a scholar, a ritualist, a poet, a dream worker. She's the director of spiritual education at the Academy for Jewish Religion. She's also the co-founder of the Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute. She is also the author of Return to the Place, which I'm holding up right now, even though you can't see it because I'm showing you this slide, but I'll show you when we're done with this. Her new book on Jewish mysticism, Return to the Place, the Magic, Meditation, and Mystery of the Sefer Yetzirah, is amazing. Everybody should buy it immediately, if not sooner. She's also written The Hebrew Priestess, Ancient Visions of Jewish Women's Spiritual Leadership with Taya Sher, also the Jewish Book of Days, A Companion for All Seasons, Sisters at Sinai, New Tales of Biblical Women, and the Book of Earth and Other Mysteries. So we're very, very honored to have her with us today. We have the beautiful and wonderful Marla Siegel. She's Associate Professor and Director of Undergraduate Studies in the Department of Global Gender and Sexuality Studies. That's quite a mouthful. I didn't even realize that. Marla is very influential on my understanding of the Sefer Yetzirah when I was writing my thesis and just really getting into it. Her works include Word and Image in Medieval Kabbalah, the text commentaries and diagrams of the Sefer Yetzirah, and Sexuality, Sociality, and Cosmology in Medieval Literary Texts. She is bringing out a new book. It's going to be published very soon, Kabbalah and Sex Magic, a Mythical Ritual Genealogy, discussing the history of the components that make up contemporary sex magic ritual as they appear in Jewish esoteric texts. So that will be wonderful and something to look forward to. You've met already our dear Rabbi Tamima Audrey Itzkovitz. She's the spiritual leader of Holistic Jew in Santa Monica, California. And she is a teacher of Davenology and Kabbalah and prayer. She's written the Holistic Jew Shachrit Weekday Siddur and 7 Sacred Circles. And she attended a modern Orthodox yeshiva. She's a student of Reb Zalman. And there's just a lot to say about what Tamima does. I literally had to cut out 17 paragraphs from here, but I'm going to be giving everybody everybody's website so that you'll be able to go there and find out more about what each of our presenters is involved with. She engages with traditional text through a different kind of slant of light from a traditional yet egalitarian, ecologically aware spiritual perspective, and her goal is to bring forward the renewed meaning and practice, creative sparks and movement in contemporary Jewish life. And finally on this panel, last but not least at all, Gabriel Mancuso, who received his doctoral degree in Jewish studies from University College in London. He studied in Oxford. He was a fellow at the Warburg Institute. He's joining us from Rome, or Venice, actually, Venice, Italy today, not Venice, California. He is the director of the Eugene Program in Jewish Studies for the Medici Archive Project in Florence and the Venetian Center for International Jewish Studies. And he's very, very famous among all academics as the English translator of Shabtai Dinolo's Sefer HaCholmi, which I'm probably mispronouncing. We'll let him pronounce it the right way. And this is a reference book that everybody needs to have. And if you don't know who Shabtai Dinolo is, you're going to know by the end of this session. So I want to welcome everybody. And Jill, I'd like to ask you to start by giving us a little introduction. What are we talking about when we're talking about the Sefer Yetzirah?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lorelai, for having me. And I'm really honored to be in such illustrious company and happy to be here today. So I'm just going to say a few words about the Sefer Yetzirah, about this book of creation, just to give us a little context before everyone dives into this specific topic. So Sefer Yetzirah, or the Book of Creation, sometimes translated the Book of Formation, is a rare and mysterious Jewish book that has a very unusual genre. It doesn't look anything like the Talmud. It's not law. It's not midrash. It doesn't look like a biblical narrative. It is something really unto itself, and is written in very brief, cryptic, poetic sections. And there are many theories about when the book was written, everything from the 1st to the 9th century CE. But let's say perhaps in the 6th century CE in Mesopotamia. It bears some resemblance to Jewish magical literature of that period. Sefer Yetzirah and its commentaries are a major inspiration for the growth of the Kabbalah centuries later. It is really it is the first book to use many terms that later become very important to the Kabbalah. Oh my goodness. And it's also been a very important inspiration for me personally. One moment, sorry. Nothing stops the post people, sorry. So I want to say a little bit about the content of the book and why it has been an inspiration to so many Jews and other people across time. The book tells of the process by which God created the world. So it essentially takes us through God's process of creation, which uses some of the language of Genesis, but is really very different. And the book combines a magical kind of language with a contemplative kind of language. And it also interweaves the story of God's creative process with instruction to the reader about how to connect to this process, how to participate in the forces of creation. So it really goes back and forth between allowing us to sort of contemplate God's creation and also to think about ourselves as participants in that creation. The book uses two primary images to tell this story, to create this interwoven reality. The first is the carving of the letters. Right? The primary theme of the book is the Aleph Bet, the power of the Hebrew letters. God engraves these letters into the fabric of the universe. Also, God uses mysterious dimensions known as sphirot that are also a part of the frame of the cosmos. And these engraved letters, which we might think of as hollow, channel divine creative intention into the world. And God creates all phenomena, all creations, the whole diversity of everything, via combinations of these 22 letters. And the letters, along with the sphirot or dimensions, are called nitivot pliot chokhmah, wondrous paths of wisdom, and seem to be a kind of webwork of hollow channels that run between the one and the many. And the language of Sefer Yetzirah often speaks about running and returning, moving between oneness and manyness. The second of the crucial images of Sefer Yetzirah is the cosmic temple. So a kind of cube-like structure that uses the same language as the language of the temple in Jerusalem, but really comprises the whole cosmos. And both God and the practitioner work with this cosmic temple, which is sealed on 6 sides to maintain it as a structurally sound container for life, for creation. And this container has 3 basic dimensions, also called the 3 books: space, in Hebrew olam or world; time, in Hebrew shana, or year; and nefesh, which means body, soul, person, perspective. So I'll just briefly show you what this looks like. It's really a hypercube. It's a 5-dimensional space. So we see the space in the center has 6 dimensions. Time has 2, beginning and it has 6 faces. Time has 2. Person also has 2 faces, good and evil or good and bad. And this is essentially what the universe looks like from Sefer Yetzirah's perspective. Okay. Now, each letter has a function in space, in time, and in body, soul, and also a specific spot in the cosmic temple. And I think this is going to be crucial for our work today to understand that letters manifested separately in space, in time, and in person. And letters are also at the root of an element or quality. So just to give some examples, the mem, the letter mem, the middle letter of the Aleph Bet, is one of the three mother letters, three fundamental letters of the Aleph Bet. The mem is connected to water, that's its element. It is also a channel for the creation of the earth in the realm of space. It is a channel for the creation of winter in the realm of time. And in the body, mem manifests in the belly. The mem also represents the lower third of the cosmic temple. So mem brings all these things into being. So what this means, well, let me give another example. Well, actually, let me say what this means is that entities in space, like planets, entities in time, like the months, and entities in the body soul, like the hand or the liver or the eye, are all connected via the letter that forms each one of them. So via these letters that bring together multiple dimensions in their work, you can have two entities that don't seem at all alike, right? That can be connected. So for example, the letter Bet rules over the planet Saturn in space, the day of Shabbat in time, and the mouth in the body soul, and the upward plane of the cosmic temple. And it also rules over the quality of life or wisdom, depending on what version of the book you're reading. And it also governs the direction of up in the cosmic temple. So all of these separate, diverse elements are connected via the letter Bet. Similarly, the letter Gimel is connected to Jupiter, Sunday, the right eye, the downward plane of the cosmic temple, and wealth or peace, again, depending on what version you're reading. So I'll just show one more image of what this looks like. So we can see that all of these letters are connected to these different planes, and each one is also connected to a planet, and each one is also connected to a part of the body. So this means that Sefer Yetzirah inherently assumes a system of astrology, because it assumes that stars and human bodies are connected via the letters, and space and time themselves are connected to the stars, and specific elements of creation are all innately connected, even though they may not on the surface appear connected or alike. So this cosmic temple that Sefer Yetzirah beautifully constructs for us is not only a structure, but a network of connections. And our understanding of which things are connected in which ways seems, according to the Sefer Yetzirah, to allow the adept, the seeker, the practitioner, a greater knowledge of creation's mysteries. And there's much more to say about this, but I think I'll pause there and let our colleagues discuss. But that's a little bit of an introduction to give you a sense of how we might relate to this book as a connector of stars and souls.
Thank you, Jill. Wonderful introduction. I'm holding up, I'm going to just put myself on spotlight here also so you can see me. This is her book, Return to the Place. Everyone should get it immediately because it's extremely wonderful. Makes the Sefer Yetzirah so accessible. Okay, great. That was a wonderful introduction. So let's talk about the magic. Marla, what do you have to say about the magic of the Sefer Yetzirah?
I want to say first, I'm really grateful to be here. And I'm really grateful to be with all my wonderful colleagues and the wonderful audience. And I was actually really grateful for the chance to rethink what I mean by magic in Sefer Yetzirah, because I've been friends with this book for a long time now. And at first I had kind of my thinking about magic has changed a lot. And I mean, if it's okay, maybe I want to go through it with you a little bit. Yeah. So at first, I need to actually Oh, here we go. So like the first thing that I really wanted to ask myself when I started thinking about this is, okay, so there's some magic about Sefer Yetzirah, but what kind, right? So I thought about that, and I came up with a few different kinds of magic, right? So there's the divine magic of creation, right? Then there's the human emulation of that, which Rabbi Jill Hammer has pointed out. The instructions are really in the book for human beings to emulate that creative process. And it happens throughout. So it happens in the dead center of the book, and it happens at the end of the book, right? When it narrates how Abraham combined letters and created, right? So there's that part, right? And then there's the medieval interpretation of it, and also the one that you could take from the Talmud, right? Which is that human practitioners use divine creative magic rituals to make a golem, right? And then as the Sefer Yetzirah sort of travels with people through time, it becomes a part of emergent ideas about sex magic as well, right? And so I think you can find some of that in Nachmanides' commentary, and you can find it in like in other ones too, but there are all these diagrams of, and maybe I should show you one now, but there are these diagrams of the divine womb, right, that accompany commentaries on the Sefer Yetzirah, right? And so what, in my thinking about it, what I understood was that these commentators were interpreting the Sefer Yetzirah through the Bahir, right, which came later, right? So there's the 10th century layer and there's the 12th century layer. And that book itself is a double commentary on the Sefer Yetzirah, right? So there's like the divine magic, there's the divine creative magic, right? Then there's the human emulation of the divine creative processes. Then there's sort of golem making. And then there are these kind of emergent ideas that, like, because people interpret the Sefer Yetzirah as narrating divine creation by means of sexual reproduction with letter forms, right? Then it becomes part of human ideas about sex magic, right? So that's sort of one part of it. And I feel like maybe I should pause for a moment before I talk about what I think magic is. So if this is should I stop now or should I keep going?
I don't know. I'm completely entranced by what you're saying. So
Well,
I think
does anybody follow it? What were you going to say?
I was going to ask if anybody else on the panel had something to say or respond to Marla about that.
Because if yes, we could stop, and if not, I kind of want to talk about what I've learned about magic and thinking about this.
Okay, yeah, please do.
Okay, so I really began with a very simple idea about what magic is. So I started with Durkheim, right? And so there's this, Durkheim has this idea of totemization, right? So that when we totemize, right, that's a process of investing an object with power, right? And specifically, it's a process of sort of crystallizing our own values as human beings, right? Projecting them onto that object, right? And when we interact with that object, and when we venerate that object, we're actually re-inscribing our own individual and social values. For Durkheim, it's always social, right? And for me, that process of totemization is at the very basis of the practice of magic. So when we talk about what Bet represents and what it corresponds to in the human body, in the year, in the universe, that's a process of totemization, right? So what we're doing is we're turning the letter Bet into an object that we can manipulate, and it's invested with all these social structures and values. Okay, that's it's old, it's quite useful, but I think it's only the beginning, right? So then you go to Edel, right? And you say, okay, well, Edel says that when he has a very pithy definition of magic that I enjoy very much, right? Which is that religion is ritual that's integral or made or native, right? And magic is ritual that's alien. So religion is your ritual and magic is somebody else's, right? And then people have kind of added to that saying, actually, no, magic, well, how can you have such a thing as Jewish magic if that's the case, right? So essentially magic is contested ritual. So it's ritual that's both integral and alien. Okay, also kind of simple, right? But they work nicely together. But then I thought, all right, how does magic actually work? Do these definitions account for the experience of magic? I don't know that they do, right? And so then I started thinking about people like people who theorize the relation between feeling and religion, like Donovan Schaefer, for example, right? And Thomas Tweed, right? So essentially, those two say that religion cultivates feelings and also like it cultivates, so it deals with the reality of embodied experience. Okay, so as a body moving through space and time, you have feelings, right? And those feelings happen on this embodied level, and on that level they're called affect, right? But then as we begin to name them, they become feelings, right? And as we perform them, they become emotions, right? So the affect is the thing that happens in you that you maybe haven't named, right? The feeling is that thing that happens in you that you do name, right? And so once you name it, you can talk about it, right? It becomes an object out in the world. And then emotion is social, and it's not really necessarily connected to anything that you experience in your body, okay? So what these folks say about religion is that it either sort of manages and names these affective experiences, right? And that it kind of channels them into a practice, right? It puts them to use in some way. And then finally, I lost my train of thought. But but the idea then is that also that it cultivates these affects and tries to also put them to use. And so then I started looking at magic and I thought, there's a lot of feeling language in magic. What's going on with that? What are we really talking about when we're talking about performing magic? And so then I actually read this really great book for somebody's tenure file. She's my colleague. She's amazing. Her name's Christine Varnado. And she has this book called The Shapes of Fancy, and it's just come out. And one of the things that she's thinking about, she's thinking about desire, right? This book is about desire, queer desire in early modern drama. And she says this. She says that desire is not always oriented toward or confined to natural human bodies. Rather, it's often staged through prosthetic material objects. So what that means is that she's examining how people interact with objects in drama, and that those objects are sort of, they're prosthetics of the human body, and they sort of articulate and cultivate desire, right? And she's looking specifically at queer desires. And in her mind, queer desires are desires that are not always named or easily categorized, right? And then I thought, okay, what about magic? Magic's got feelings, magic's got objects, and magic is a way of kind of cultivating desire and channeling it and turning it into an action. And so then I thought, okay, what's happening in Sefer Yetzirah with emotion, desire, power, right? And so that's where I am. Okay. And so
that's where you are.
That's where I am. I mean, I could come up with a whole example, but here's what when I thought about it, I thought, okay, well, actually, when we're looking at astrology in the Sefer Yetzirah, what we're looking at is we're looking at power, right? And we're looking at power that's located both in the divine, right? In the cosmos and in the human body. So that's three things, right? And also, as soon as the text gets around to articulating its astrology, it's already lodged power and desire and emotion in the human body. And so I guess what I want to ask everybody, if they feel like answering, is, okay, how do you see the relationship between the body, feeling, and the cosmos, right, in the Sefer Yetzirah? And how does that work with its power?
Good question. But before we answer that, Rabbi Jonathan has suggested that we pause for a minute because the conjunction's actually happening right now.
Yeah.
The actual conjunction is happening right now. So Jonathan, would you like to lead a little something? Where are you?
Yes, I'm here. Yehi Ratzon. May it be your will, O source of creation, mover of the stars, fountain of healing, conjunctions, mathematics, and desire, to bring us together in peace and love today, that we manifest in our own bodies the divine creative abilities to bring forth and manifest good energy in this planet. May it be your will, O God, that we learn through science, through astrology, through mathematics, through our study, to bring love into the world, to desire that love and to manifest it through the letters, through prayer, through silence. We all come together with gratitude today that we're still here, that we've toughed out a pandemic, and we support each other to go through difficult times at this auspicious moment. Ken Hiratzon.
Ken Hiratzon, amen.
So let's take just a few seconds in silence and acknowledge the conjunction. Rucha'at Shechina, Yotzeret HaMeorot.
Amen, amen, amen. My friend, my old friend Forrest Walker is here somewhere in this group of people who asked me recently, are we going to be praying to the planets? And I said, by no means are we. We're not praying to them. We're praying with them as manifestations of divine energy in physical form. So thank you so much for that, Jonathan. Gabriel, yes. Do you want to respond?
Yeah. It's my turn. Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Well, first of all, Lorelai, I want to thank you because your invitation made as I said in my previous emails a long time ago, months ago, made my ear because I found out, and tonight it is confirmed that many people know Sefer Yetzirah. I thought it was the only one in Italy or in Europe or something like that, with an interest in Sefer Yetzirah. And I also found out that other people know Donalo, that he was my hero for many years. So I have many things to say today, and I would start from two elements, two ideas expressed by Gilles and Marla right now. First of all, a problem concerning the composition of Sefer Yetzirah, and second, the idea that is correct in my view, but also questionable. I mean, questionable means that it can be discussed about. That Sefer Yetzirah is a magic test. There is something magic intrinsically hidden or contained in the text. First of all, about dating. When Sefer Yetzirah was composed, as Gilles said, we have a lot of hypotheses going back to Sholem. It could be in between the 2nd and 6th century. Some scholars said even the 1st century before the Common Era, or even before, doesn't matter. One of the key points in studying the history of Sefer Yetzirah is that it was composed, and then for many centuries, as Joseph Dunn underlined very well, very clearly, it disappeared basically as a text as we know it today. Redactionally speaking, we know a text that appeared around the 10th century when it was commented by a bunch of Greek commentators. First of all, Ezra Israeli, and then Duna Namim, and then Sadia Gaon, and then finally, and then the fourth was Shabbatai Donovan. One of the key points in studying the history of this text is that it was composed during the 1st centuries of the Common Era, doesn't matter when exactly, and then disappeared. Well, when it appeared, it surfaced, it seems to be, to many people around the Mediterranean, North Africa, Southern Italy, that are close to each other, apparently, but at the time distant from each other, okay, was considered a sacred text, but also a logic text, extremely mathematical text. Now, what is the meaning of a magic text? Is it compatible with the idea of a text describing the universe, the human body, the celestial bodies, and then the connection in between the micro and macrocosm in a very rational way? To some people say, no, this excludes magic. Magic is something irrational, which is not true in my view. Magic is something that happens and that you can somehow master. Combining the letters is not a casual event happening because God by mistake made some otiyot and then activated some sefirot. It is not like that. In Sefer Yetzirah, we don't have God. And we have God sometimes. According to Heyman and to those who study the text scientifically, God is not mentioned. He will be mentioned in the later sanctions, but is not present. It's not God speaking about himself or his creation or herself and the creation. Is more a sort of universal narrative of creation that we distinct. We define Yetzirah. No, Biriah is not creation; it's formation. So I'm going to the point. Why around the 10th century, some people, especially Neoplatonists, started studying the text, writing long perushim, commentaries on Sefer Yetzirah. Well, one of the key points is that Sefer Yetzirah allows you to understand the universe, the whole creation, in a very rational way. We have the letters, we have the sefirot, and there we have a process of combination. As Mala said, combination is a question of activating power. We have in Sefer Yetzirah a hierarchy of power. We have the first letter, the second group of letters, and then the others. Everything is started like in a mechanism. There is a spark, something that it was activated, okay, and then automatically moves, giving birth to creation. This is an extremely modern idea of creation. Now, think about other cosmologies, how other peoples were describing the birth of the universe in the past. If you compare different myths and mythologies, and then to the narrative of Sefer Yetzirah seems to be a chemical text. It seems to be a mathematical text. And this is the Greek novelty somehow of Sefer Yetzirah. Is a secular text full of divine inspiration. So now going to the point, why in the 10th century was it commented? We don't know exactly what happened. The point is that different people around the Mediterranean started commenting on these texts, and around the mid-10th century, presumably around 1920, 1930, a guy born in Apulia, the very deep south of Italy, who was a doctor, a physician, started looking at these texts as the only place where he could combine together his Byzantine, Greek, Latin classic background with Jewish tradition. So Sefer Yetzirah is not only a description of formation of the universe, it's also a tool to understand how different disciplines can go together. Now, many of you are engineers, scientists, humanists, whatever. Sefer Yetzirah is a typical example, is a perfect example how you can combine together different knowledge, different disciplines into a unique frame, coherently combined together. So let me share, if you have time, my couple of slides in here. Just a second, sorry. Where is it? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Shabbatai Donald was born in Apulia, which is right in here, in the deep south of Italy. He was born at the beginning around 912, 913, when Apulia, like Calabria and Sicily, for a short time, I have to say, but Apulia remained under the Byzantine rule for a good 100 years. So he was born as a Byzantine Jew in Apulia. Then he was deported because, I mean, Apulia was conquered by the Saracens, which is North African dynasties. And then he went to Calabria. I think all of you know where it's kind of basically here. It's the end of the boot, the Italian boot. And then he lived in a small city called Rossano Calabro. Rossano Calabro was one of the most important Byzantine centers of southern Italy, one of the most important religious centers, obviously, of Christianism, but also an extremely important political center. There was a judge, it was basically a vice emperor governing the south of Italy, and Donolo used to be his doctoral physician. His name was Shabbatai ben Abraham, the son of Abraham, but then we presume that he acquired a nickname of Donolo, meaning Dominulus, the little lord, sort of a big little guy, something like that, for his knowledge of medicine and presumably astrology or whatever. What happens when he went to Calabria? He started plunging himself into this study of non-Jewish disciplines, especially astrology. And he said, I studied with a guy whose name was Baghdad. I think it is a toponym meaning coming from Baghdad. He studied astrology, he studied Babylonian astrology, and then classic astrology. And then he admits that what he read, what he studied was completely incompatible with what he had studied as a Jew. So he tried to combine the two fields together. So studying medicine, Hippocratic Hellenic medicine, plus the Talmudic tradition, studying astrology, Jesus astrology, the element of Jesus astrology that defined the Talmud or whatever he had at the time, plus classic astrology. Then he wrote some scientific, texts like Sefer Mikahot, the Book of Mixtures, and then probably other texts on medicine. This is Apulia. Okay, and this is Calabria when he went as an old person, and where presumably when he died around 982, and he wrote these texts, Pratica ad Antidotarium in Latin and Greek. Probably, we are not sure about that. He wrote in Hebrew Sefer Mikahot, which is basically a book on pharmacology, and then Sefer Mazalot, which is books on astrology, but then Sefer Chachmoni. Why? What is Sefer Chachmoni? Sefer Chachmoni is his opus magnus, basically. Is the text where he combines together what he studied in medicine, in astrology, and in the Bible. All these combined, merged together, thanks to Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Chachmoni is divided into three sections. One is a short biographical section. The second section, that's really interesting, is a commentary on Genesis 1:26. Let's make man in our image after our likeness. And then the third section is a commentary on Sefer Yetzirah. These sections are not divided. Of course, you can also remove the biographical section if you want, but the second and the third, they are together. One is somehow the beginning of the other. Is a sort of chain in between the two sections. Is a consequence in terms of contents. He explains that the apparent difficulty in explaining how man was created after God's image and likeness can be explained by looking at Sefer Yetzirah, because Sefer Yetzirah describes the inner content of creation. So he says, if you look at how the creation was done before the Beriah, when God thought about creation, you can look at Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah reveals the mechanism of creation. And obviously, by looking at the mechanism, I'm calling mechanism at the time was mysteries, the hidden mechanism of creation. You can understand what happens now, Neoplatonically speaking, the epiphany of creation as it is now. There is a problem, however, because if you read Sefer Yetzirah, especially the astronomical, astrological elements, and you compare them to the classic astrology, meaning Greek, Roman, Ptolemy, for instance, especially Ptolemy, you will find many difficulties, many uncorrespondencies. So when Donolo interprets and comments on Sefer Yetzirah, he finds many contradictions, let's say so. How he solve all these contradictions? It's pretty easy for him. He says, well, give a look to this text. This is a text of Sefer Yetzirah. It says, with Bet were formed Saturn, the Sabbath, the mouth, as well as life and death. With Gima were created Jupiter, Sunday, the right eye, as well as peace and war. But then he says, even though Saturn, the Sabbath, the mouth, as well as life and death were formed with the letter Bet, Saturn does not govern life or the mouth, but only the Sabbath, and so on. He's basically reformulating the text of Sefer Yetzirah by trying to combine, to implement what Sefer Yetzirah says with the classic tradition. This is his big enterprise. He tries to do that. Sometimes he's forcing the text. He just say, well, Sefer Yetzirah puts elements together in connection, but these connections should be understood better, as I will tell you. So, for instance, there is a connection between Beth and Sabbath, of course, and Saturday, whatever, and Saturn, but the govern, the rule, the power over the elements are not as Sefer Yetzirah says. They should be reckoned by according to what classic tradition knows and says. This is the great novelty of Donolo. Donolo tries to blend together the ancient knowledge of Yetzirah with what is studied. Sometimes his corrections or reinterpretation are completely subjective. They are trying just to explain why there is something apparently not combining together. But this is a lengthy commentary, and I will tell you that this commentary is understood by Donolo as a scientific commentary. If you want to know medicine, you have to study Sefer Yetzirah, because only through the knowledge of the inner mechanism of Yetzirah, then you will understand the Bria, which is creation, and then the epiphany, the material epiphany, how the body is done, how the celestial bodies work. This is the great novelty in comparison to Sadia Gaon said before, or Dunash, or Israeli, who are just defining some correspondences in their commentaries, not trying to blend together the reality as it is known and Sefer Yetzirah as a text, as a coherent text, okay? Now, I want to, do you have time, sorry, Lorelai?
Yes.
Okay, what the other big question, the other big problem is about Sefer Yetzirah as a separate text, as I said before. Do we know something about Sefer Yetzirah before it was commented? As many of you know very well, there are apparently some references about Sefer Yetzirah in the Talmud, into Berakot and Sanhedrin. We have the so-called Kota Yetzirah, where we have some people said to combine the letters together, creating calf and then eating the animals, or creating something out of nothing by combining the letters. Now, is this Sefer Yetzirah as it would be known in the 10th century? According to many people, this is not Sefer Yetzirah as we know today. It might be, however, that Sefer Yetzirah was also this around the 5th or the 6th century, and then it became the Sefer Yetzirah with the addition of the Sefirot, basically the merging of the tradition together much later. But in my opinion, one of the great points, really interesting point in Sefer Yetzirah is the attribution to Abraham. Donolo says something very interesting about Abraham. He's basically putting Abraham and Moses on the same level. And it doesn't say this like that, but it's hidden between the lines what he thinks. since the Torah was given to Moses, okay, Yetzirah was given to Abraham. So in terms of chronology, the Torah comes after Sefer Yetzirah, and Sefer Yetzirah comes before the Torah. So the creation narrative of the Torah is somehow, let me tell you, I don't want to sound too heretic, sort of secondary, is a narrative, is a tale of creation, where according to Donolo, Sefer Yetzirah's formation is the real process taking place when everything was created. It's basically going back to the very beginning, not of creation, of the thinking of creation, when God started thinking about creating something. His ideas, his paradigms, the forms, the main meaning that will be given light to creation. This is what Sefer Yetzirah says. So imagine that this is how Sefer Yetzirah was interpreted in the 10th century. So it's not magic, but it's super powerful. It's super dangerous somehow, because it's replacing the biblical narrative. So Donolo's tried also to limit, to narrow somehow this potential magnitude, narrative magnitude of Sefer Yetzirah. It's an extremely complicated enterprise for him. It is trying to justify the difficulties, the aporias, by explaining what happened in terms of classic knowledge, of course. At the end of his commentaries, is he able to justify Sefer Yetzirah as a legitimate text? In his eyes, he does it. Not only that, but also says it's a sacred text. It was written, is attributed to Abraham, because Abraham knew these ancient mysteries, basically the science of combining the element together. Now, combining the element together to us, to 21st century people, sounds like, you know, something childish, but it's not. That's the beginning of science. It's pharmacology. It's measuring the distances in between the planets. It's describing reality by putting the element one after the other. So it's not a question of combining numbers and then 1 + 1 + 1 equals 2. It's more than that. It's a juxtaposition of creative elements where one juxtaposed to the other will be given one, more than one, but 4, 5, because creation is a divine action. It will, and then Donald says, as God has an infinite creative power, so human creatures have the same. That's why he says you can do as many kids as you want. You won't stop doing that. Well, it will stop somehow in a point. This is what he does. So basically, he's also daring to go to the point that's saying God and man are facing each other in terms of ruling over creation and as creative creatures, which is really amazing, I think. Just a second, okay.
That's amazing. I'm thinking of alchemy, you know, the idea of combining elements. So there's this primal alchemy that is being described in the Sefer Yetzirah that you're talking about through Donolo's lens, and the idea of that. This is a very radical idea that the Sefer Yetzirah doesn't predate, but comes before the Torah. So this is also the idea of potentiality versus manifestation, like which comes first, Tishrei or Nisan, which is really the birthday of the world, or the creation of Ha'adam Harishon, the primal human being, was created first in thought and then in reality. This is how they solve the whole Tishrei Nisan problem. So what I hear you saying is that the Sefer Yetzirah is like a peek into the mind of God, just as Danny Mack, our great teacher, has taught us many times about the Sphirot, that they are, that the Spherotic array is a peek into the mind of God. that we're looking in the internal workings of how God, how the inside of God, so to speak, how it works. That could be said the same of the Sefer Yetzirah, from what I'm hearing you say, that this is an internal peek of what was going on inside of God's mind before Bereshit, in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, Donald believes that when he says quite explicitly, once he had all the letters and the elements combined in front of whatever, then God started creating the universe. So it's a fair. He look at the planning work, at the program, and then he started working. Then we have Rashid Barai Elohim et Hasheman V'Taretz, whatever. We have the narrative, the beginning of the mechanism. So this is it sounds like an extreme position, but if you think about it, it's pretty logical and straightforward. It's it's just studying the plans of creation, not the process of building the building.
It's God magic.
Oh yeah. And the other point is that through Sefer Yetzirah, you can also have an understanding of the difficulties in explaining the correspondence between the micro and the macro elements in the material world. So if you have a problem with astrology and connecting, this is what he says in terms of, as a physician, the organs of the body to the planet, and you don't know why the influence of a planet is not apparent, then you have to look at Sefer Yetzirah, where you will see that there is a correspondence between the specific organ of the body and the planet, but the rule, government, the force is not that one. So it's like saying, I'm in front of you, but I'm not dominating you, basically. So there is a line, but that line is not as strong. I'm super simplifying you, of course.
Of all the commentators, he was the only one who came from Byzantium, which is quite a different atmosphere than the other commentators like Saja, who was in the Islamic world. Do you think that influenced his point of view about the Sefer Yetzirah and made him more, because to me, I'm just going to hold up the universe of Shabdai Danolo. I'm a big fangirl of this book. I think about whether or not the atmosphere that he grew up in influenced his perception and made him emphasize even more the astrological importance of the text, rather than other commentators that looked at it and kind of played it down. Because you see in some of the commentators they almost like don't pay attention to the astrology part of it as so much.
Sure. Absolutely. What you say is perfect. Yes. Coming from Byzantium, basically not coming from Constantinople, but living in a Byzantine environment, as a doctor, he had to study classic astrology, and he says it quite explicitly. I will send you the slides with the text where it says, I studied the disciplines of the Gentiles because in our books, there is no substance in it. So he declares quite clearly that he didn't find any Jewish book on science explaining real things. He just studied some part of the Talmud and the Bible, but he didn't find any scientific plausible explanation of the real events. So as a Byzantine humanist and scholar, he was supposed to know very well classic, astrology. And then when he's facing this text, he found a text that is, 90% compatible, but not entirely. So this is why he started deconstructing the text somehow. You know what happens? You can see in the slide that I showed before. In the text, he's the first to write a commentary in Hebrew, remember, because Saadia Gaon wrote that in Arabic, Dunash is the same in Arabic, and then it was translated later in Hebrew. Isaac Israeli was the teacher of Dunash also in Arabic. So he's the first text written in a Hebrew that is pretty similar to the Mishnah, and so also to the language of Sefer Yetzirah. So basically what he says, he interpolates his own interpretation following the text. Is basically amplifying the text. This is why Abraham Bar Hiyya, and then Eleazar of Worms, much later, of course, in the 13th century. We'll be reading the text, the commentary of Shabbatai Donolo, believing that the commentary is the text, because writing in a similar language as Sefer Yetzirah is basically misleading the reader, especially the later reader, who will combine the commentary and the commented text together. So that's what, going back to your question, yes, he was supposed to study the details of Sefer Yetzirah as a Byzantine scholar, especially as a doctor. So he needs to go into detail. Saadia Gaon is a philosopher, is a Greek rabbi and an exegete and a commentator, but doesn't even need to explain his own knowledge through Sefer Yetzirah. And the same Dunash. Duna is a Neoplatonist.
Mhm.
Dunash and Donolo are quite similar, but Donolo is much more analytical, is more medical, let's say so. It's, go to the point, it goes to the detail, you know? And then that's why his commentary is so important. It will be so important for the Hasidei Ashkenaz in Worms, when the Kalonymus family will go from southern Italy to central Italy and then to Germany. And if you read Eleazar of Worms' commentary of Sefer Yetzirah, 80% is Donolo. It's misunderstood as part of the text, you know.
Right. It makes me think of Aviva Zornberg's work, The Beginning of Desire, which is about Bereshit, Genesis, and that brings back to Marla's commentary about desire, and tying this together with your idea that the Sefer Yetzirah predated, well, not predated in terms of writing, but came before the book of Genesis. So you have the entire Sefer Yetzirah come down to that bet in Bereshit, letting you in, and that's the bridge. The bet is also the bridge, right? Because that the Torah doesn't start with the Aleph. The Aleph is too ineffable. It starts with the bet, and that the desire that the Creator had to create was expressed in mathematical terms, spatial terms, astrological terms, and then terms of the human body in the Sefer Yetzirah. And then the Torah is once creation happens, this is the story, this is what happens. So maybe that's one of the connections.
May add just a last note. When you mentioned the Byzantine culture and the fact that it is Donald as a Byzantine scholar is commenting on Sefer Yetzirah, well, I said Donald is a very rational person. He's a doctor, he's a scientist, whatever, but he also knows very well the so-called Gnostic tradition of Byzantium. So for instance, the idea of a universal creature moving the stars, the Tli, the dragon. Donald makes a lot of confusion in it. Sometimes he says that the Tli is the dragon that is in the fourth sky and is the causes of the eclipses of the sun, whatever. But then he says he's an axis mundi. It has a twofold, threefold, multiple-fold interpretation of Tli. It doesn't matter. You know, as a Byzantine person, he explained the unexplainable events, the celestial bodies like eclipses or the retrograde motion of the planets, by calling an animal, a universal creature dominating the entire spheres, you know? So he says, we have these abnormal movement because there is an animal, and the animal is has to be a dragon, cannot be a dog, of course.
No, of course not a dog. It has to be a dragon. Well, it's because it's well, here's my theory. It's the lunar nodes. It's the north and south lunar nodes,
sure.
Which is the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. And the dragon in the universe is like a king upon his throne, as the text says. And the year in the world is like a king going throughout his provinces. The king goes on a procession throughout all his provinces, takes a tour of everything he owns. The king is the sun. The sun goes around all 12 signs, and then the heart, right? What does it say? It says the heart within a man is like what's the I've lost it in my brain. Help me, folks.
It's like a king in war, right?
That's right.
It's like a king in war.
That's right. The heart in a person is like a king at war. This is my favorite. I think that's actually my favorite part of the whole book. When I wrote my thesis, I took all of the, I took a bunch of eclipse points and mapped them out as, you know how the eclipses always start either at the south or the north pole. There's two kinds of eclipses. Eclipses that have to do with the southern lunar node or the northern lunar node, and they go in eclipse patterns around the earth like this, from south to north, north to south, and it looks like stretched around a giant ball if you were able to plot it all out like DNA, have the double helix of the DNA. Also looks like the undulating body of a dragon. So you've seen many pictures of a dragon. Dragons are always depicted as this undulating image. So I vote for that in terms of the understanding of what the Tali is. It's also, Tali is also the root that comes from, to be known as the word to hang, or to the hanged one. And that gets into another whole issue. So I wanted to ask Rabbi Tamima, thanks for hanging out and waiting so patiently. I wanted to ask you about using the Sefer Yetzirah in personal spiritual practice and how you might integrate the different components. Do you use the astrological components? How do you bring all of this down into an actual practice?
So really glad to be here at this moment and like really feeling the presence of the shift that's going on. So Sefer Yetzirah is really like I feel of it, it's like a handbook of the unfolding of how creation manifests. And it really tells you or gives an idea of what's apt to be potent in the local cosmos at any particular time. You know, how so? Oh, so see, and so that what I like about that is that there's like this energetic that you can rest into. Like, for example, Marlo was talking about, you know, affect, feeling, and emotion. And Sefer Yetzirah talks to us about what's going on, the energies in the local cosmos at a given time. So like, for example, we're here on the solstice, the winter solstice, and the energetic, it's the shortest day of the year on the northern hemisphere. And the energy tends to be more inward. And so we know as we're approaching the winter solstice, for example, that people will go more internal. It's a time to stay in more so, as opposed to the summer solstice when people are out there acting, moving around, doing a lot of things. It's just really conducive to how the affect that humans feel, and that results in, like, you know, action, feelings and action. So it's like the space that we rest into. Another aspect that I think is really important is the somatic aspect. So I've studied and I continue to study, and it continues to inform my day-to-day practice, the commentary attributed to the Ravad in writing, but everyone knows it's Joseph Ashkenazi who really wrote it. And his very first, he starts out Mishnah, his commentary on Mishnah 1:1 with Sarichat Taladat Shel Kol Hakadosh Baruch Hu Bara Ba'olamo Kenegdo Bara Ba'Adam Shene'emar Ne'aseh Adam B'Tzelmenu Kidmutenu, which translates roughly as, you really got to know this, that for everything the Holy One of Blessing created in the world, there was a corresponding part created within the human. As it is written in Torah, we will make humanity in our form, in our image. And why does this? And all this so that we will be able to contemplate from within what is revealed, the secret wisdoms. Okay, so these are marching orders, if you will. So if I want to know God, I want to know the source of all, I can look out, yes, and feel what's going on in the local cosmos, but I can also look into my personal, my architecture of my body. And that also fits well with Sefer Yetzirah talking about, you know, the different parts of the body, like, you know, Avir being, the Aleph being in the chest, Aish, fire in the head, and you know, which is Mem, and the Shin in the belly, and the different aspects of the Eitz Chaim, you know, in the body. But there are a couple of versions of that at least. But it's a clue as to how to work with it. So, you know, there's also the letters of the day, which let me show you an image. Well, I'm gonna skip through here. Well, here, this is actually a Mishnah from Sefer Yetzirah. This is really drawn from it. This is Mishnah 1-2, and it is 10 Sfirot without wetness. 10 Sfirot b'li ma. Ve'esrim shayim otiyot yesod. Shalosh imot ve'sheva kfulot u'shtei esrei pshutot. 10 Sfirot without wetness. And I love this word b'li ma because it is so without wetness. It's just says it so articulately. And 22 letters of foundation, 3 mothers and 7 doubles, and 12 simple letters. So what does this mean? Well, one of the ways I really like to work with it on a day-to-day basis is looking at the letters that are on each day. So the 3 mother letters, Aleph, Mem, Shin, and you see they're actually more complicated looking than the other letters. Aleph stands as Avir, stands for air, which is the temperate seasons, which are autumn and fall and spring. Autumn and springtime, where it's temperate. Shin, it's like fire, and it's summertime, and Mem is wintertime. So we know that when we enter these seasons, it's like a wheel within a wheel, and this wheel turns. And right now we're in winter. So Mayim, the Mem is on, right? So that gets highlighted. So too with the weekly letters, the 7 double letters. And one of the things that's really exciting about the double letters is that they have 2 sounds, which means they have 2 distinct resonances, ways of being. Ashkenazi writes in his commentary that with the dagesh, like a bet, for example, bet or vet would be an example of the double letter having 2 sounds. With the dagesh, it's transmitting, and when it's open, it's receiving. And so these double letters act as bidirectional channels, if you will, being able to transmit and receive. And these correspond to a particular day of the week, right? So Yom Rishon, day 1, which starts after Shabbos, Bet, and today is Yom Sheni, Gimel. And each day of the week, another one of these letters gets highlighted. And so too with the 12 simples, which are the 12 simple letters, which relate to the 12 constellations of the zodiac in Sefer Yetzirah, and it's written out explicitly. So it starts with Hey for Nisan, and we are all the way around here today in Tevet. So based on this mapping, for example, we have 3 letters for today, and they repeat during some of the weeks, because like next week we're still in Tevet, it'll be the same. So that you can also, for uniqueness, you can also work with the day of the month that it is, which tells you about the activity of the moon on at this particular instant. So 3 letters for today: Mem, Gimel, Ayin. Okay, and there's like so many things we can do with this. It's like very, very exciting. I know, I guess you have to find this thing thrilling.
I find it thrilling. Did you make that chart? I love that.
No, I found it on the internet. I made another one which was simple, but this which was different. But I love this, and it's like a gear, you know. So they talk in Ezekiel's vision, a wheel within a wheel, you know. And it's like, so when I hear that term, a wheel within a wheel, I see it's this image. it's also the planets orbiting the sun, you know, and the activity like that. It's like a fine-tuned, I want to call it a watch, but more than a fine-tuned, like the ultimate to the nth degree fine-tuned watch.
Right. It's like an astrolab, only cosmic.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And so like one thing you can do with this is to combine the letters. So like, for example, and Abraham Bar Hiyya teaches that, you know, even if it's not Hebrew, it doesn't make sense in Hebrew, you write the letters out, you play with them, you get a hit, you get like a twinkle, pay attention to it. You know, it comes through in any language, you know, and just like Maga, for example, is, you know, it's like Krav Maga, getting whacked. You know, and so they keep giving. Another way to work with this also is through sounding. So one of the things I like to do is a spiritual practice called liquid Kabbalah. And one of the ways that we work it, you know, it's also an aspect of moving inside the body to explore. And so we might make a sound like a mem, mem, mem as a meditation, and then pause and wait for the body's response. So it's also an opportunity to get out of the thinking head, which you know, which has its uses, but it's not the end all. And so many of us, or I'll speak for myself, it's so easy to stay in the thinking head, but then to have a practice that's like prelingual to enter in and to explore what's going on internally in the tissue in my body as a result, and to invoke fluid resonance. It's very potent. So those are a couple of ideas here of things that we can do. And so another aspect that I think is really important that I think Jill touched on is the aspect of Olam, Shana, Nefesh, space, time, and spirit. And so one of the things that's also cool about it, and I think it was mentioned by the last person, and Mr. Mancuso, and I'm sorry, Gabriel, of course, an angel name, I should be able to remember that, was mentioned in here. It was the aspects of, okay, space, time, and spirit. So, oh yeah, because God's name is not in Sefer Yetzirah. But what I think is so interesting, that's why I put it in parentheses, it's like implied, like who anointed the letter Bet? And the process of the practice also is itself a very potent meditation. So that's why I have God in parentheses, or sometimes I like using source more, or whatever name, you know, resonates in your heart. So, and this is actually how Sefer Yetzirah says the divine creation happened. Ketzad, how? Anointed the letter Bet, hinlich ot Bet b'chayim, v'kashar lo keter, v'tzar bo shabtai be'olam, v'yom rishon b'shana, v'ayin yamin b'nefesh. So much here. So like how, like really how? Anointed someone, something, some being. But that sounds too limiting when I'm talking about the source of all. The source of all anointed the letter Bet in life, tied it to Keter. So you get this picture of a letter Bet. And, you know, it's interesting how different people see things, because when Jill was talking, she talked about it as a hollow, which is like, yeah, what a beautiful meditation. And so what I've been imagining dominantly, and this is why it's so awesome to talk to one another, is like the light is shining and then there's a shadow created by the Bet. So there's there's a lot of ways. So it's like maybe that Bet is moving and twirling, and there is a shadow that comes through. So, you know, 2 Jews, 3 opinions at least. And there are more than one way to do it, which I think is actually really thrilling. So you see the letter bet, you tie it to Keter, and then visualize the light of the infinite entering in. And I like to do it, obviously, I'm modeling it on my body, and I imagine it entering into my being. And so I see this letter bet and the light moving in. And then allow it. And usually when I'm doing it, I'll make a sound with a b or a v to kind of activate the letter and to allow it to enter in. And it's like, and usually I'll feel waves. Waves are a real fundamental piece to this, that I haven't mentioned yet, but I really want to mention. Because these cycles, like of Shabtai orbiting the sun, or the Earth orbiting the sun, a circle, right? A circle, if you look at it over time, is the same as a wave. And when I receive in my practice, what tends to happen is that often it'll come in waves, which is like the Ratzo Vishuv, right? That we were talking about, the running. You're not always there. It's like AC current versus DC current. You know, you're not always on burning. You touch it, and then you go away, and then you touch it. And so that's a way for it to manifest. Okay, so and through this letter bet that has, you know, in life, which is unique to the letter bet, tied to Keter, tied to ground, and form through it Saturn in space, day one in time, and the right eye in soul. And so this is Olam Shana Nefesh. There are these three axes which are foundational in life, and I think it's really exciting in Sefer Yetzirah. One of my favorite things I learned from Reb Zalman, he would talk about an example of Olam Shana Nefesh, which, actually also, if you look at the acronym Olam Shana Nefesh, Ayin Shin Nun, Roshei Tevot, the first letter of each word makes it Ashan, smoke. So it's kind of like the holy smoke that creation rests in. So think about Yom Kippur, the holiest day, in Jerusalem, in the temple in the days of old, in the Beit Mikdash. The holiest person would go to the holiest space. So that would be the Kohen Gadol, would be the Nefesh. The time would be Yom Kippur, whatever year it was. And Olam would be, of course, the Holy of Holies, which is where you get to like maximize these three aspects. I mean, how exciting is that? Boom. So it's like a really potent moment going in and entering then. Then Reb Zalman also taught, which really gave more life to these words, that so originally Yiddishkeit, that's so limiting, excuse me, Judaism was practiced at the temple. So that means sacred space was dominant. It doesn't say that time and souls didn't matter, but the dominant practice is you go to the temple. You want to see God, you go to the temple. That was the minhag at the time. That was what people did. But then when the temple was destroyed, Judaism, which was basically a temple cult beforehand, had to change the scene because the temple wasn't available. And it's really pretty amazing when you think about it, that these people came back and transformed Jewish practice into what is now rabbinical Judaism. So the focus moved from space to time, right? So now we practice Judaism based on the calendar. And it's also based, primary, and doesn't mean these other aspects aren't present, but it's dominantly based on the calendar. And what Reb Zalman was teaching when he was still with us, your neshama should have an aliyah, is the idea of spirit. And he was saying a paradigm shift. And it's really what I see with more individual forms of expression. People are finding more ways to find personal connections rather than to source. And so it's shifting now from time arguably to spirit, and we're in this type of transition, and maybe that has to do with the age of Aquarius.
Undoubtedly.
Right. Yeah, think.
Anytime you've been talking about individuality, yeah, that's what you're talking about, the age of Aquarius.
Okay. All right, and so here's another example just to give, so it's just kind of like a formula. And so I really want to just start here because I just pulled this out of the book. And it just shows him anointed. This also shows the formula again, anointed the letter Yud, tied it to crown, and formed through it Virgo in space, Elul in time, and the left kidney in spirit. So that's another aspect to it. Oh, but I also want to mention about this one before is that, and I think it was mentioned before that, and actually this is what I read in Aryeh Kaplan's book. He said that when Sefer Yetzirah first came out, it's likely that people intentionally like confounded the planets because they didn't want to, or at least in some of the writings, because they wanted to keep the stuff secret. And there's so many different perspectives and different takes on which planet for which day. You know, I'm still working on which one is a right one. I haven't found one that I feel completely comfortable with, and I would love to hear what you all come up with respect to it. So that's still a mystery. So I guess I also want to say that, so we can't take it as, you know, it's like, I want to say Torah, maybe, because there are some aspects. So like the aspect Saturn might have been flipped out, for example. At least that's what Aryeh Kaplan said in his book. Okay. And the other thing that Sefer Yetzirah really gives me is like an understanding of a unified principle, a unified source that is like orchestrating this dance and ways to meet the presence. You know, really the sense of seeing God in, I want to say all things, or if not all things, most things, or like when I pause to look for the godliness in it, it's like, it's actually the letter Yud, and maybe that's why I picked this one actually. The letter Yud, because Yud, according to Yosef Ashkenazi, and I'm sure others, because it's like that spark of God that we find in all things. So like I can look, maybe it's a little hard if I look at the computer screen, okay, is there a spark of God in here? How can I connect with this? But I can see all your faces there, and it's like the spark of God is really, you know, powerful and potent in it. Yeah, and I guess there's a couple other images I just want to share. So the Eitz Chaim, most of us have seen this, and that's it's the masculine tree of life, but few people have seen this. And this is actually an image I got from the Yosef Ashkenazi commentary, and I made it purple because I think it looks better. It's just fun to change the colors of it. But what it shows is a different orientation of the Sfirot. So like many of us are familiar with the model of the head, you know, head, Chokhmah Bina, the top part being like the head of the body, and then the lower 6 here being like the torso, and really embodying source like this. And that's, you know, and that's really, for me, a potent way to meet source. But what this model does is it adds another level. So like if this is the tree of life that I am, well, and you take a cross section of the body, of my body, you're going to see different kinds of tissue. He was a doctor also, which is pretty interesting. And so when you look at this tissue, you know, there's keter, there's chokhmah, there's like bone, and he would differentiate in it that water being the activating ingredient. So whatever, you know, basically whatever had more water, you know, was more corporeal, and whatever has less water, like bone is the tissue that has less water. Well, that might be keter. And moving on out from, you know, cartilage and fat and mochin, and also the idea that everything has an aspect of, in the body, like all the tissue has an aspect of consciousness, which also speaks to somatic practice. And what I want to show you this. So one of the things, when I first saw the pictures of DNA compared to the Eitz Chaim, I was really stricken. like, especially like this is the feminine tree of life. It's like the cross section. And this is the double helix DNA. And I've recently read that it wasn't, I mean, it's a little contrary to what was said here before, but I'll just share the information that these pictures are taken without water. So when the body's dead, the water is eliminated from it, and so they tend to curl. And so people who've seen DNA look more flat, which is more like the other model.
Interesting.
I mean, so I think this is so profound. It just blows my mind, you know, so really the mystics, our mystics, were on to something really strong, really, really real, and they could intuit it because they didn't have these microscopes available to them.
That is pretty amazing, the way that they came up with this without any computers or modern instruments the way that we have. It is one of the wonders of our sages. I'm getting some confusing messages in the chat about people not being able to hear or see. I can see and hear just fine. So I just would like to say, if somebody is having troubles, they need to change their view to I don't know what speaker view.
There's a little button on top that can let you change the size of the. I don't. So I mean, I don't know if people know about that.
It's not you. It's everybody is on a different kind of a device. Some people are on computers, some are on iPads, etc. So I wanted to ask Jill, because we're talking about embodiment, and I'm back to our wonderful book, Return to the Place. One of the unique contributions Jill Hammer has made to the Sefer Yetzirah is adding in practice. And this is what we were talking about just now, about, you know, how to embody, how to bring down the wisdom of the Sefer Yetzirah into our meditations, as you described, Tamima. And Jill, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the ritual aspects of it, the practices that you've put into the book, and maybe if you would like to lead us in something, we would love to have that from you.
Wonderful, thank you. So to begin, I just want to go back to the question that Marla asked about magic. One of my favorite definitions of magic is David Abram's definition, where he says that magic is the experience of being alive in a world that's alive, being alive in a living world. And and that's really an affective description, right? That magic is a feeling that we have, you know, when everything is in relationship to us, you know, in a living way. And I think that that's really the focus of the ritual aspect of Sefer Yetzirah. One of the ways that I think about the book is as an unfolding ritual, because it keeps involving the reader. You know, it keeps sort of inviting the reader, you know, you try this, you do this. So there's a way that the book is not a book, you know, it's really a dialogue with the reader. And so sometimes I think of it as a ritual. That you could read the book from beginning to end and follow the instructions, and you would have done a ritual for the creation of the world. And so when I went through to think about how to translate, you know, what is the practice the book is inviting us into, there are really two, you know, and one has to do with the combination of the letters. You know, it has to do with the ways that just as God combines the letters to make all of these phenomena, you know, that we can sit in meditation and combine each letter with each other letter, and you know, in some way mirror, right, the massive diversity of the cosmos. And that is sort of like a DNA strand, right? We're essentially spelling out, right, the diversity of the cosmos. You know, and I find that really, you know, really quite powerful. But the other, which in some ways I focused on more, you know, in the practical sections of my book, really has to do with image itself. That Sefer Yetzirah keeps proposing to us images to understand the world. And so it would propose, and I do think that it's doing science as well as magic, as well as contemplation. You know, it's really sort of in this really interesting multi-genre endeavor. And it keeps offering us images to try to give us a sense of what it is that they're trying to explain, the feeling of what the book is trying to tell us. For example, the image of the flame in a burning coal. Right? That this spheroidal, like a flame in a burning coal. So what's that image? That the spheroid are embedded in the divine, right? And the divine is embedded in the spheroid. And for Sefer Yetzirah, the spheroid are very much part of the physical world, right? There are things like up and down and north. So they're very embedded in the physical world, and yet they're also an extension of the divine. They're both at the same time. And so the book offers us this image of the flame in a burning coal, right? That the coal and the flame are intimately connected, even though they look different, right? They're part of the same phenomenon. So I tried to go through as I was reading the book and think about what are the images that the book is inviting us to contemplate. And I tried to pull out those images and invite us to, really invite us to contemplate them. And I think that is one of the core practices of the book, is the practice of the image, of allowing our normal consciousness, our sort of ordinary, separate, egoic consciousness, to be broken down by these images, right? Till we are more a part of the all than we were before. And that, I think, is really, in many ways, the core practice of the book, is to try to take us out of our separateness, for some period of time. Of course, we're going to go back there, right? That's why the book says running and returning. So I know we are meant to close soon, so I'll offer one of the practices from the book, the one that sort of feels right to me for this moment, is from the very end of chapter 1, and the text it comments on is, these are the 10 sfirot b'lima, the 10 inscriptions in the void, or the 10 sfirot of without whatness. Breath of the living God, wind, water, fire, above and below, east and west, north and south. Right, so that's the end. It's a kind of seal of chapter 1. It's an invocation of the elemental energies that God partners with to create the world. So if you want to come along on this journey, I invite you to put down anything you're holding and close your eyes. And breathe out. I invite you to see and feel and know that you are surrounded by 4 walls. And these 4 walls are made of wind, water, fire, and divine breath. The walls around you, one is of wind, one of water, one of fire, and one of holy divine breath. Turn to the first wall, the wall of wind, and see inscribed on this wall an image, word, or phrase, a message for you, a secret of creation. Turn to the wall of water and again see image, word, letter, or phrase, a message for you containing the secret of water. Turn to the wall of fire and see inscribed on that wall an image, word, or phrase, a message containing the secret of fire. And finally, turn to the wall of divine breath. See there inscribed an image, word, or phrase, a message for you. And now, inspired by these messages, call wind and water and breath and fire to fill the space within the walls and see the world created there. Breathe your own breath into that created world, adding your energy to the forces of life and creation. Breathe out and open your eyes.
Wow. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
I want to invite some questions or comments from the audience. Just kind of briefly, we're waiting for Victoria Hanna to join us from Jerusalem. It's a long way from where I am, but I'm pretty sure she'll be showing up here. She is going to be doing some embodiment of the Sefer Yetzirah for us, which is going to be amazing, and really we're going to love it, but she's a little bit late, so that's fine.
No,
Because
I'm here.
Oh, you are? Afo.
I am. Just my son was writing another name. So,
Oh, what's the name that you're here
so
for?
no, I just changed it.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, wait, let me find you. There's so many people here. Oh, here you are. Hello.
Hi. Hello from Jerusalem.
Baruch Hashem. Very nice to see you. Hold on. I'm going to put you in the spotlight. Hello. Baruch haba.
ברוכים הנמצאים.
So before you start, I just want to I know that there are probably many questions out there. I want to see if Rabbi Leah Novak is here. I think she is. I know that she wanted to mention something about the Otiot. Leah, do you want to know?
No, my question is a broader one about why we have lost solstice practice, what we think it was, why there was so much fear around it, etc. We might want to take that up later.
Yeah, we're going to do that around 2 o'clock. It's going to be a day. Okay. Does anybody have any pressing questions? I see Joel Waldman's hand up in the hand raising.
Yeah,
Joel?
hello everybody. I wanted to ask a question that is related to astrology and the Sefer Yetzirah. And whenever I wanted to ask you, how would you address a rabbi or a traditional scholar that says that, you know, the classic Ein Mazal LeIsrael, when you say, you know, when you talk about astrology and then you might mention that the planets are mentioned in the Sefer Yetzirah and all of that, but it's kind of like they use that argument that Ein Mazal LeIsrael, like if a person dedicates themselves to studying Torah and to, you know, living a life of Torah and doing all these actions, you don't even need to acknowledge the stars and you're like protected and all of that. But we do know that planets, of course, influence us and all of that. How do you kind of like make a person understand or debate or what would be like a good argument for that sort of question?
What a great question. I wrote an entire master's thesis on this question.
Oh, wow.
And the name of it is called Yesh Mazal Yisrael, because clearly the part of the Talmud in Shabbat 156a that has that famous statement that is taken completely out of context to the rest of the section. First they say, oh, Ein Mazal Yisrael, and then they spend the rest of the section explaining not only is there, but many, many, many examples of how exactly it works. So the rabbinic, I'm gonna answer and then I'll let anybody else answer, but the rabbinic enterprise was not generous and did not like to share. Okay, so it was very, very important to the rabbinic enterprise that their authority was the main authority and that there would be no deviations from their authority. And of course, astrology was the not the religion of the ancient world. It was universal to all cultures, and it was a common language. It was the language of astrology, symbols and archetypes. I could be an astrologer from Persia and go all the way around the world to another part of the world and speak to somebody in a language I didn't understand, using only the symbols and archetypes of astrology. It's like mathematics, how mathematicians who don't understand each other can talk to each other. So there was a lot of rivalry. It's a long explanation, but the truth is that people who tell you Ein Mazal Yisrael don't want there to be anything having to do with astrology, and they don't understand that astrology has been a completely normative component of Jewish culture and history since antiquity. It's really a rivalry issue, and the way that that verse is interpreted really doesn't understand. It's a modern interpretation. It's a postmodern interpretation. It's a post-Holocaust interpretation, to tell you the truth, because up until the early modern era, it was completely normal to have astrological motifs on Torah crowns, on painted synagogue walls with all of the zodiac signs, the floors of the various synagogues in northern Israel. They have zodiac wheels. There's just so much art and artifact and ephemera in Jewish communities from antiquity to the eve of World War II that just shows and proves that astrology was just a normal part of everyday Jewish cultural understanding. So now that we're in postmodern era after the Holocaust, I think it was the author of Zachor. Why is my brain blanking on me? You know, yes, he talked about forgetting and remembering, and there's a whole idea of mimetic communal norms, like mimicking. How do I know how to keep kosher? Because I watched my mother in the kitchen, not because I read the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so there's that, but this is not going to be a good enough answer. So get with me afterwards for details.
I guess I'm gonna have to read your book for sure.
I guess so. I guess I'm going to have 5 more minutes to write it. Marla, yes, Marla.
So I just want to build on what you said,
Yes.
which was a really wonderful illustration of it. It's a projection, that's all, right? It's a projection of modern cosmologies onto ancient ones, and it ignores the history of cosmology. And one of the things that we understand if we study religion and magic both is that they always operate on a cosmology, and that cosmology changes over time, right? So when people say that, they're simply ignoring the operating cosmology of the ancient and medieval world.
Right. And that's what they want to do. They want to do that. Okay. I hope that answers a little bit. I want to call on Fern Feldman. And then after that, we're going to go to Victoria Hanna. So Fern, are you there?
Yeah, I just was wondering if any of you wanted to comment on specifically, and since we're talking Sefer Yetzirah and Sefer Yetzirah's world, what does this conjunction that we're having today signify?
Well, we're actually going to be talking about that at our 2 o'clock session.
I'll be working then, but hopefully it'll be recorded.
It'll all be recorded. But the short answer is that this conjunction is part of, in Jewish astrological thought and the history of historical astrology, which is something that our next speaker, Meira Epstein, is going to talk about in terms of Ibn Ezra. There's the idea of these epochal ages that we are living through, and that we're about to start a new age, the age of Aquarius. And this conjunction that we're having right now has to do with Aquarius because it hasn't been in Aquarius since the year 1405. Last time we had a Renaissance. Maybe we're having a revolution this time. I guess we'll see. So stick around or watch you need to watch the recording of what hasn't even happened yet after it happens, okay? Panelists, you're all wonderful. I want to thank you all so much for your contributions. We're running a little bit behind time, so it's really Miera's presentation that's going to get squished up a little bit, but please hang on, Miera, and wait, and we'll get to you very soon. And Victoria, I want to welcome you. People, I want you to meet somebody. If you don't know her music, you need to know it. If you don't know her art, you need to know it. Victoria Hanna is a world-renowned composer, creator, performer, researcher, teacher of voice and language. She was chosen as one of the 50 most influential women in Israel by Forbes magazine in 2015. That's saying something. You'll see what she does. I'm not even going to try to describe it to you. First, I'm going to play a video, and then we're going to have Victoria treat us a little bit to some of her work from her home in Jerusalem. So just hold on and let me share my screen and share my computer sound.
עשרים ושתיים אותיות יסוד חקוקות בכל חצובות ברוח קבועות בפה בחמישה מקומות בגרון בחך בלשון בשיניים בשפתיים 22 אותיות שקשר בלשונו וגילה את סודו משכן במים דלקן באש העשן ברוח בערן בשבעה נהגן בשנים עשר מזלות 22 אותיות חקקן חצבן שקלן המירן צרפן צר בהם נפש כל יצור ואכל לעתיד לצור יצר מיתהו ממש עשה אינו ישנו חצב אבנים גדולות באוויר שאינו נתפס יצר מיתהו ממש עשה אינו ישנו חצב אבנים גדולות באוויר שאינו נתפס 22 אותיות יסוד 3 אמות 7 כפולות מם דוממת שין שורקת א' חוק מכריע בינתיים 3 אמות שהם 3 אבות מהם יצא אש רוח מים 7 כפולות 7 כפולות ג' ג' ד' ד' כ' כ' פ' פ' ר' ר' ת' ת' 7 כפולות 7 ולא 6 7 כפולות 7 ולא 8 עיניים, שתי אוזניים, שתי נקבי האף והפה צבע חשוב, מה שאין הפה יכול לדבר ואין האוזן יכולה לשמוע לא יצר מיתהו ממש עשה אינו ישנו חצב אבנים גדולות באוויר שאינו נתפס יצר מיתהו ממש עשה אינו ישנו חצב אבנים גדולות באוויר שאינו מדינה ועכן כמין מלחמה יצר מיתהו ממש עשה אינו ישנו חצב אבנים גדולות באוויר שאינו נתפס יצר מיתהו ממש עשה אינו ישנו חצב אבנים גדולות באוויר שאינו
Woohoo!
Gewalt.
Thank you. Wow,
Yay, that
it's so special for me to be here with you in this occasion. I would like, I will open with with a quote from the Book of Creation in English, and then I will go back to Hebrew. 22 foundation letters engraved with voice, carved with breath, set in the mouth in 5 places, in the throat, in the palate, in the tongue, in the teeth, in the lips. 22, and from them God depicted all that was formed and all that would be formed. 22 אותיות יסוד חקוקות בכל. I want you to hear the onomatopoeic sensation of the language. Engraved is hakuk, hakuk. You can really feel the action in the mouth, right? Hakuk. And then engraved with voice, look how beautiful it is musically. Hakukot bakol, kol, kol, kol. The word kol is voice. Hakukot bakol, engraved with voice. So now we understand that the action of the mouth is to engrave. And with what we are engraving, with the voice. I want to invite you to feel this action while I'm doing it. Engraved with voice, carved with breath. I'm taking the air, only the breath, the air, and I'm carving in the space. Some letters, like the shin, has only air, and I'm carving only with air, not with voice. Listen to the shin, how I'm carving the shin. I would like to invite you now to carve with me the shin. The shin, according to the Book of Creation, is located in the area of the head, here. And when I'm doing the shin, when I'm carving the shin, I want you to see the shin, to use your hands and to make yourself the shin. You are becoming the shin. We have 3 parts in our body, 3 ends, the ends of the hands and 1 end here. And we are pulling the energy from up down with a sound. It's not an idea. It's not an explanation. It's an action. It's a physical action with a vibration. Let's inhale from the nostrils. Okay. 22 foundation letters engraved with voice, carved with breath, set in the mouth in 5 places, in the throat, in the palate, in the tongue, in the teeth, in the lips. 22, and from them God depicted. We are depicting. This is another verb. This is another action. Another letter that is on the opposite side is the letter mem. And the way the letter shin looks, it's exactly pointing this area. It points the upper side, the upper direction. Everything is closed here, and this is shin. Shh. But the mem, according to the book of creation, before I will tell you, I want you just to listen, because when we hear the vibration, we get the information. We don't need to talk a lot. We can hear it, and we will sense it. So please, just I'm going to create now the mem in the virtual space that we have now. I'm inhaling from the nostrils as if I'm smelling a very good smell, and I'm going to react to this action with a little mem. I can keep on and on, but we don't have a lot of time. When we hear this vibration, we can definitely feel the earth, Mother Earth. It's not an idea. We can feel it. We can sense it. Something is sealed in this sound. There is a sealed energy that is contained inside. You can feel it like a magnet. The earth is connected, according to the book of creation, to the belly, to the lower part of the body. So when I'm doing the mem, it is exactly like the mem looks like, because the mem looks like this. It goes down. I'm taking the whole space and I'm pointing the space down. This is the mem. And this is the shin. Shh, only air, no voice. It's the upper side, the upper direction. This is the shin and this is the mem. Now I would like to share with you the text of that I was singing in this song. This was the whole lyrics were from the book of creation in Hebrew, and what I was singing as the chorus was this sentence: He carved something out of nothing. He made non-existence into existence. He carved massive stones from air that cannot be grasped. And now I would like you to hear how it sounds in Hebrew. יצר מתוהו ממש. עשה אינו ישנו. חצב אבנים גדולות מאוויר שאינו נתפס. Okay. יצר מתוהו ממש. ממש, the word ממש, tohu is the void. He made something out of the void. But for the word mamash in Hebrew, there is no translation. We can try it. I'm saying something. He made something. But mamash is something else. When I'm saying mamash, I don't know how to explain it. It almost like it's like a a real manifestation in a real time. It's a manifestation in a real time. Mamash, mamash. Let's say it. Let's just say it and feel it. Mamash, mamash. And what is the action? What is the action, the physical action of this word? I'm taking the mem and I'm opening it as a ma. Then I'm taking another mem and I'm opening it again as a ma. And then I take those two mems and I pull down the shin. This is the action. And what is the meaning of this action? Is a manifestation. What did I do here? I took the earth. I took the belly. I took Mother Earth. And I took the sky, the air, the abstract world. I connected it to the contained magnetic area. And this is the manifestation. Even when I'm saying manifestation, you can feel this mem, manifestation. So let's try now to do, we are going to do this action, to demonstrate. We are demonstrating the word mamash. You can, if you want, you can stand, but if you're not standing, feel your toes, feel your legs, feel the lower part of the body, feel the earth, feel the floor, the energy when you are doing the mem. Open it, and then we will do the shin. And while you're doing this, before you do this, I want you to think in your intention, in your kavanah, in your intention of something that you want to manifest. I know what I want to manifest soon. I have 2 new video clips that are about to come. I really want it to happen. So I'm going to think about something very simple, very, very physical, or something else that you want to be manifested. And while you're thinking with your kavanah on this thing, we will all together say together the word mamash, and we are going to pull the energy, this amazing energy of this time in our mouth with these letters to manifest something that we want. And the kavanah of all of us together in this virtual space is going to help us. I hope. So let's do it. First, we're thinking, I'm sure something will come out because we always want to manifest. So just choose really something that you want to manifest. Think about it. And after you think about it, move your lips, nobody hears you, and just say the word that of the thing that you want to be manifested. I will say it out loud because I'm on the speaker. 2 video clips, one for Puma and one for Lilith. Move your lips, say it out loud. And now, are you ready? Inhale from the nostrils. Ma. Ma. Shh. We are going to say it again. I want you to use your body, use your hands. See the letters in the body, feel them. Wow, we did it. Before we are going to finish to end our session, I promised that I'm going to sing something. So I'm going to use not only the speech, I'm going to use the voice, because the speech and the voice are two different dimensions. The speech is about specification, about particularity. I'm sorry if my English is not that perfect, but you understand me. It's about details, and the voice connects with the abstract world, the primal world. And you know where the voice is located? The voice is located with the Aleph. And the Aleph is located here in the chest. Please touch your chest and see the Aleph. The Aleph starts from here, but it goes to all of the direction. It points the whole space, backwards, forward, right, left, up, down, the endless space. This is the Aleph. And the Aleph actually is silence. All of the sounds are located in the silence. It's the meditation zone. But when we have the intention to put a vowel, to move something inside us, then the voice appears. And then this voice is an appearance. It's a pure appearance of our existence right now, the vibration of our own living existence in a real time. We let it come out, and then it fade back. It goes back into its own place, into the quiet where it belongs. So now I'm going to sing. I'm going to use my voice, and you will hear the difference between speaking or rapping into bringing a voice into the space. And I'm going to choose this sentence from the Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim. Look how also Shir HaShirim, how beautiful it is with the shin. Shir HaShirim אשר לשלומו ישקני מנשיקות פיהו. It's so many shins. We have 6 shins, and then we go, the 7th is the mouth. שיר השירים אשר לשלומו ישקני מנשיקות פיהו. Our mouth is a tool of creation. That's what we learn from the book of creation. Okay, so now I'm going to sing from the Song of Songs. It's a calling. It's a calling song for the feminine divine to come and dwell with us. My dove, hidden in the cliff, in the shadow of the rock, let me see you. Let me hear your voice. יונתי בחגבי הסלע, בסתר המדרגה, הראיני את מראייך, השמיעיני את קולך. יונתי בחגבי הסלע, בסתר המדרגה הריני את מראייך, השמיעיני את קולך, כי קולך ערב ומראך נווה. יונתי Thank you. If somebody wants to ask a question very quickly, so you can do it, but very quickly.
Do we have a question for Victoria Hanna from anybody? That just sent me out into another universe. I don't know if I can ever formulate another question again.
How
was
do you
that.
spell your name? How do you spell your name, please?
How do you spell her name? Victoria Hanna, H-A-N-N-A. And I would like to show you guys something really quickly. Victoria Hanna, you can learn with her. So she is teaching a course. I don't even know what it's called. Oh, here it is. Open My Lips, Mouth Creates Worlds. It's a 6-week digital course, meaning it's going to be online. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in touch with Victoria by her email, which is victoriaworkshops@gmail.com. I'll also put that in the chat. You can go to this webpage, tinyurl.com/openmylips. I'll put those two things into the chat. It starts on January 17th. So it's going to be Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern time, as in the eastern part of the United States, on January 17th. And anybody who wants to learn with Victoria, and I think everybody does, I know I do, should check this out. I'm just going to copy and paste this into the chat right now, as a matter of fact. Okay.
Thank you so much. Wow. It's so beautiful to be here in Jerusalem and to see that in the Gola, people are so enthusiastic.
It's magic.
For the letters, for the sounds, for the connection, for the Brit, for the how do you say Brit?
The covenant?
Yeah. Covenant. Because when we are 8, nobody asks us, we are being covenanted if we are boys. But doing the covenant of the mouth is something amazing. We are doing it, and you are doing it now. This is really amazing. And I feel so happy to see it. From Jerusalem, you know, we are talking the language, we are using it in our everyday life, and if we forget sometimes, but that you are in the Gola, you have a privilege that you are really appreciating every letter as something so special, and it really it is so beautiful, really.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you, and thank you for staying up late and putting your child into another room so you could sing from your.
You're an energy master.
Yes.
Right.
יישר כוחך, תתחדש. בכל מעשייך, תתחדש.
Do you know the song Oi from Pripyat, Victoria?
What song?
Did you know the song in Yiddish, Eufen Pripyat.
From the Sefer Yetzirah, yeah.
When I was a little girl in Winnipeg, Manitoba, my parents were survivors of the Holocaust. I grew up with all of this, but I often think of that song with the line, how when it says, Eufen Pripyat brennt a fire.
Yeah.
And then it says, und der Rebbe lernt, kleine Kinderlech.
Yes, I know this song.
Aleph Beis.
It's
So
a
when
very
you think-
famous one.
Yes, but when you are born, as many of us who are on this Zoom call, with a little bit more attention to spirituality from our incredible foundation of Judaism, that I think as a child, with parents who spoke so many languages, having become a teacher and teaching many aspects, as a musician and an artist myself, I've just published a book called Chastia's Enchantment. And it's based on Kabbalah and Judaism and yoga and meditation. But the reason I said this to you is what a real honor to have you today. My rabbi, one of my rabbis, used to live in Calgary, Rabbi Korber, and we were talking about the upcoming Tu B'Shvat and a Seder that he's going to be having, and he'd invited me. This is how I found out about you. So may we continue in links of these incredible lights. Hanukkah just finished, that we may be blessed with Saturn and Jupiter in its conjunction now as we study more about this particular time of the need of teaching Kabbalah in a practical way that we've needed. I grew up with it.
Amen. Amen. Can I interrupt here and ask, hello, who is speaking? I just see your microphone. It's a Zoom user. What's your name?
I have to tell you, I have been listening to you while I've been driving to pick up certain foods for my daughter who's visiting, who got a cold.
Okay, could you just tell us your name?
My name is Hilda Chassia Sternfeld Smith.
Thank you, Hilda.
I'm a chaya to be with you.
Thank you, Baruch Hashem. Thank you, and I want to thank Victoria. Thank you so much for being with us. It's amazing. I put the information in the chat, and also after the conference, when I send out the links to all of the recordings, I will send out information about how you can access more work from our amazing presenters. So I want to thank everybody who was on the Sefer Yetzirah panel, which went by like in 10 minutes, even though it was a couple of hours. I think we could have gone on much longer than that. Rabbi Jill Hammer, thank you so much for your work. People, you need to go get this book immediately, if not sooner. Return to the Place, The Magic, Meditation, and Mystery of the Sefer Yetzirah by Rabbi Jill Hammer, who was with us today. Oh, I'm just so glad that you could be with us. Marla Segal, you are a rock star, and I can't wait for your new book to come out about sex magic. And I insist that you come to the Aquarian Minyan Yeshiva and give us a special preview and teach for us.
Yes.
Excited, and thank you ever so much. It was really great to be with everybody.
It was just wonderful. And Gabrielle, thank you so much for being with us all the way from Venice, and we appreciate you so much. It's like being with, like I said earlier, it's like being inside my whole library. I'm not going to take my little Zoom camera all around my house, but if you've been in my house, you understand that some of my biggest heroes and heroines are in the room with us right now. It's wonderful to have you with us and appreciate you so much. And Rabbi Tamima, thank you so much for your invocation, your teaching, all of your wisdom. I'm going to stop the recording right now.